Maria wiped the sweat from her brow as she leaned against the wall of the high-rise building, her heart pounding in her chest. The sun was setting over the Manhattan skyline, casting a golden hue over the city that never sleeps. Even in her exhaustion, she couldn't help but admire the view from the second-to-last floor of the building, where she had spent the last 8 hours polishing floors and cleaning windows. It was a job she had held for years, but lately the weight of her circumstances felt heavier than ever. She glanced at her watch, noting that her shift would soon end. The thought of returning home to her husband, Tom, filled her with a mix of anxiety and dread. Tom had been laid off from his construction job for months, and his frustration over their financial struggles was palpable. Maria often felt like a tightrope walker, balancing her own dreams with the grim reality of their lives. Just a little longer, she whispered to herself, trying to summon the last bits of energy to finish her work. As she scrubbed the last floor, Maria's mind drifted away from the grime and dust. She envisioned a life where she wouldn't have to spend her evenings exhausted and worrying about bills. She could see herself in a modest yet cozy home with a small garden, the aroma of fresh flowers wafting through the air. In her daydreams, she wore clothes that weren't worn and faded, and she could afford to take a vacation somewhere warm, far away from the concrete jungle of New York City. "Why can't life be different?" she muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why can't I have just a little bit of luck?" After finishing her shift, Maria gathered her cleaning supplies, her muscles aching from the labor. As she made her way to the elevator, she spotted a group of well-dressed individuals laughing boisterously, their laughter echoing through the marble lobby. They were the kind of people Maria had only seen in magazines, wealthy, carefree, and filled with joy. A pang of envy shot through her. Maybe one day, she thought, stepping into the elevator and pressing the button for the ground floor. When she finally reached home, the familiar sight of their cramped apartment greeted her. The dim lights flickered, and a sense of gloom wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Tom was slouched on the couch, his expression dark and brooding. He had been watching television, but the screen flickered with muted colors, the content forgotten. Maria felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she approached him. "Hey, Tom," she said softly, trying to sound cheerful despite her fatigue. "How was your day?" Tom looked up, his eyes filled with frustration. "Same as always, Maria. Nothing but job rejections and a pile of bills that keeps growing. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," he replied, his voice laced with anger. She set down her cleaning supplies and sighed. "I know it's tough, but we have to hang in there. Something will come up. I believe that." He scoffed, shaking his head. "Belief isn't going to pay the rent or buy groceries. You're working hard and I'm sitting here like a useless lump. It's not fair," he said, his tone sharp. Maria felt a wave of guilt wash over her. "You're not useless, Tom. You're just going through a rough patch. We'll figure it out together." "Together?" he snapped, sitting up straight. "I'm the one who can't find work while you're out there cleaning up after rich people. What's the point of together when it feels like I'm the only one struggling?" "Don't say that," Maria replied, her voice trembling. "I'm doing my best to keep things afloat. We just need some time." Tom ran his hands through his hair, frustration radiating from him. "Time? Time isn't on our side, Maria. It's ticking away and we're drowning in bills. I can't keep relying on your paycheck. I need to contribute." The tension in the room thickened, and Maria knew this conversation was spiraling out of control. She wanted to scream that she was tired of feeling like the sole provider, that she too had dreams that felt so far out of reach. But she kept her mouth shut, knowing that any mention of her dreams would only add fuel to the fire. "Let's just eat something. I'm starving," she finally said, attempting to change the subject. "Fine," Tom grumbled, leaning back against the couch. "I'll heat up some leftovers." As Maria moved to the tiny kitchen, she couldn't shake off the feeling of despair. Their once vibrant love seemed to be overshadowed by the weight of their financial struggles. She glanced at the cluttered countertops filled with unpaid bills and takeout containers. Each bill felt like a reminder of their situation, and each takeout container was a testament to their inability to cook properly due to time constraints. After dinner, Maria sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled piece of paper she had been holding onto for weeks. A lottery ticket. It was just a whim, a fleeting thought that had crossed her mind during one of her shifts. She had spent the last of her spare change on it, never truly believing she would win. But as she stared at the ticket, something stirred within her. What if, she whispered to herself, the thought taking root in her mind. What if she won? What if this ticket could change everything? The possibilities flooded her imagination. She could pay off their debts, finally get the house she had always dreamed of, and even help Tom get back on his feet. The thought was intoxicating. On a whim, she decided to buy another ticket the next day, just to see if fortune might smile upon her. She tucked the crumpled ticket back into her pocket, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, this could be the turning point they desperately needed. But as she lay in bed that night, the weight of her decision loomed over her like a storm cloud. What if she actually won? The thought was thrilling, yet terrifying. Would she share the news with Tom? Would he even believe it? Or would it spark another argument, another moment of resentment? In the darkness of the room, Maria closed her eyes, her mind racing with dreams of a brighter future. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her desire to escape their reality could lead her down a path she might not be able to return from. The lottery ticket was merely a piece of paper, but in that moment, it felt like the key to her freedom. And as her thoughts swirled, she realized that sometimes desperation could lead one to make choices that would forever alter the course of their lives. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Maria's small apartment, casting a warm glow across the room. She sat at the tiny kitchen table, her heart racing as she held the crumpled lottery ticket in her trembling hands. The numbers danced before her eyes, each one a whisper of hope and fear. She had spent the night tossing and turning, the weight of her secret pressing down on her chest like a heavy blanket. Today was the day she would check the numbers, and with a deep breath, she took the plunge. "Okay, let's see what fate has in store for me," she murmured to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone and navigated to the lottery website, her heart pounding in her ears. Each number she read felt like a countdown to a new life or a plunge into despair. As she compared the ticket to the screen, disbelief washed over her. "No, no, no! This can't be real!" she gasped, her voice echoing in the quiet apartment. There it was, a perfect match, every single number. Maria blinked, convinced her eyes were deceiving her. She read the numbers again, and each time they matched. Tears filled her eyes as the reality of her win began to sink in. $10 million. It was more than she had ever dared to dream. "Tom!" she called out, her voice laced with excitement. But as she looked towards the living room, she remembered his mood from the night before. He was still sulking, still trapped in the cycle of his unemployment. A wave of guilt washed over her. How could she share this news with him? This was her chance to break free, to carve out a life she had always wanted, a life away from the constant struggle. Instead of seeking him out immediately, Maria pressed her back against the chair, her mind racing. She could almost feel the weight of the money in her hands, the possibilities unfolding like a map before her. She envisioned a new house, a cozy little place with a garden where she could plant flowers and grow tomatoes. She imagined Tom working again, but in a job that made him happy, far removed from the construction sites that drained his spirit. Maybe I could surprise him, she thought, a smile creeping across her face as she pictured the two of them sitting on a porch, sipping lemonade, watching the sunset. But then the image of Tom's face when he found out the truth flashed in her mind, dousing her excitement with a cold dose of reality. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I can't tell him yet." The secret swirled around her like a storm, tempting and terrifying. The allure of the money was powerful, but the deception weighed heavily on her conscience. Later that day, as Maria prepared dinner, her thoughts drifted back to the lottery win. She sliced vegetables, her mind a whirlwind of plans and worries. She needed to figure out how to handle the cash without Tom discovering anything. She could use the money to set herself up first, and then if she played her cards right, maybe she could find a way to share it with him. Eventually. "Dinner," she called, her voice light, masking the turmoil inside her. Tom shuffled into the kitchen, his face still clouded with the shadows of his frustration. "Smells good," he said, his eyes momentarily lighting up. But Maria could see the underlying tension in his posture, the way he clenched his fists as he sat down. "We need to talk about the bills," Tom said, his voice heavy with concern. "I just don't know how we're going to manage this month." Maria forced a smile, her heart pounding as she considered the pile of cash she would soon have access to. "We'll figure something out, Tom. Just give it time." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Time's all we seem to have, Maria. I hate being stuck like this. I hate not being able to provide for you." "Don't say that," she replied, her voice softening. "You're doing your best. We'll get through this together." But inside, she felt the walls of her deception closing in. After dinner, Maria retreated to the bedroom, her sanctuary. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities. What if she could take a trip? Maybe a weekend getaway to somewhere warm and sunny. Just the two of them, away from the stress. She could book a hotel with a pool, buy new clothes. The thought sent a shiver of excitement through her. But as she started to drift off to sleep, guilt washed over her again, this time sharper and more persistent. She thought of Tom, his dreams, his aspirations, and all that he had sacrificed for them. Could she really live with herself if she kept this win a secret from him? The question echoed in her mind, but she pushed it away, unwilling to confront the truth. In the following days, Maria began to take action. She withdrew cash from various ATMs, careful to avoid large transactions that might raise suspicion. Each time she pocketed the bills, a thrill coursed through her veins, mingling with the guilt that gnawed at her conscience. She was starting to create a hidden life, a world where she could escape the drudgery of her daily existence. At night, she would lie awake, imagining her future. She pictured herself in a sleek new car, cruising down the highway with the windows down, the wind whipping through her hair. The thought made her heart race. She could start a business, invest in something meaningful, or even just buy clothes that made her feel beautiful. The dreams were intoxicating, but they always came with a twinge of anxiety. One evening, she found herself at the ATM again, fingers trembling as she entered her PIN. She withdrew a larger sum this time, enough to make a dent in her plans. As she stuffed the cash into her purse, a sense of empowerment coursed through her. For the first time in a long while, she felt in control of her life. "Just a little more, and I'll be ready," she whispered to herself, the thrill of her secret life feeling like a drug. But as she walked home, the weight of the money felt heavier than ever. Each step echoed with the realization that she was living a lie, and the further she went into this charade, the harder it would be to turn back. Back at home, Tom was watching TV, the flickering light illuminating his tired features. He looked up as Maria entered, and she plastered on a smile, trying to dispel the dark cloud that had settled over their lives. "Hey, how about a movie night?" she suggested, hoping to lift his spirits. "Sure," he replied, but his eyes were distant, lost in thoughts of his own struggles. Maria could feel the separation between them growing, an invisible chasm that her secret only widened. As they settled onto the couch, Maria leaned into Tom, trying to bridge the gap. "I love you, you know," she said softly, hoping to reassure him. "I know," he replied, his gaze still fixed on the screen. "I just wish things were different." Maria's heart ached at his words, and she felt the enormity of her deception bearing down on her. The money had the potential to change everything, but at what cost? Would it be worth sacrificing their trust and love? "Maybe soon, things will be different," she whispered, but inside she was unsure. The weight of her secret threatened to crush her, and as the movie played on, her mind raced with thoughts of escape, of freedom, and the haunting realization that every decision she made would lead her further into a web of deceit. Maria felt a rush of exhilaration as she sat behind the wheel of her brand new car, a sleek silver sedan that sparkled under the midday sun. The scent of fresh leather filled the interior, intoxicating her senses. She glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror, her heart racing with the thrill of her secret life. It was exhilarating, but also terrifying. Just a few days ago, she was scrubbing floors in a high-rise building, and now she was a woman transformed, at least in her own mind. "Just a loan from a friend," she had told Tom with a casual smile, masking the truth that threatened to unravel her carefully constructed facade. She rehearsed the story in her head, embellishing the details to make it more believable. After all, she had to protect her secret, her newfound freedom. As she drove down the bustling streets of New York, she felt as if she was gliding above her mundane reality, untethered. When she arrived home, she parked the car a few blocks away, just out of Tom's line of sight. The last thing she wanted was for him to question her about the car's sudden appearance. With a quick glance around to ensure no one was watching, she slipped out of the driver's seat and walked briskly towards their apartment, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and guilt. "Hey, Maria, you're back early!" Tom's voice pierced through the comforting silence of their small home. He sat on the couch, surrounded by job listings and a cup of cold coffee, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Yeah, I decided to take a longer lunch," she replied, forcing a casual tone, her hands instinctively smoothing her hair as if it would somehow help her appear more nonchalant. "Did you hear back from that cleaning service you applied to?" he asked, a hint of hope sparking in his tired eyes. "Not yet," she said, avoiding his gaze. Instead, she focused on the stack of bills on the table, their harsh reality looming over her like a dark cloud. "But I'm sure something will come up soon." Tom sighed, a deep, resigned sound that echoed through the small living room. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Maria. I feel like I'm drowning." She felt a pang of sympathy for him, but it quickly morphed into frustration. If he only knew what she had in store for them, if he only understood the freedom she was grasping for, he wouldn't be so despondent. She had dreams for both of them, dreams that he was too caught up in his own despair to see. "I'll make dinner," she offered, hoping to distract him from his worries. "How about your favorite? Chicken adobo?" "Sounds great," he replied, a hint of a smile breaking through the shadows of his face. "You always know how to cheer me up." As she moved to the kitchen, she couldn't shake off the nagging guilt that clung to her. She chopped vegetables, her mind racing with thoughts of her new life, of the parties she could attend, the people she could meet. Yet the more she fantasized, the more she felt the weight of her deception. What would happen when the truth came out? Would Tom ever forgive her? Meanwhile, Tom's mind was a storm of confusion and suspicion. He had noticed the small changes in Maria's demeanor, the way her smile seemed more radiant, her laughter more genuine. But it was the little things that nagged at him. The new confidence in her stride, the way she would sometimes get lost in thought, staring out the window as if she were dreaming of a world far beyond their cramped apartment. As the days passed, Tom's unease only grew. He noticed how Maria had started to dress a little better, wearing outfits that were a touch too extravagant for their modest lifestyle. The red dress she wore for dinner one night made his heart flutter, but it also raised questions. Where was she getting the money for these clothes? Why was she so different? "Maria, can we talk?" he asked one evening, his voice steady but laced with concern. "Sure. What's on your mind?" she replied, forcing herself to maintain eye contact, even though she felt her heart race in anticipation of what he might say. "I've been thinking. You've seemed different lately. Is everything okay?" He probed, his brow knitting in concern. "Tom, I'm fine. Just trying to stay positive, you know." She smiled, hoping to ease his worries, but the tightening in her stomach told her that her lies were a fragile web. "Are you sure? Because it seems like you're hiding something from me," he said, his voice low and serious. "I just want us to be open with each other." "Of course. You know I would never hide anything from you," she replied, her voice slightly shaky. "It's just been a tough time, and I'm trying to keep things together." "Right," Tom said, his eyes searching hers for the truth. "I just want to make sure you're not, feeling overwhelmed or anything. I don't want you to feel like you have to carry everything alone." Maria felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to tell him everything, about the lottery win, her plans for a new life, the car parked just out of sight, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Instead, she opted for a reassuring smile. "I promise, Tom. I'm here for you, and we'll get through this together." As the days turned into weeks, Maria's secret life began to take shape. She attended a lavish party one Saturday night, a world filled with elegant dresses and laughter that seemed to echo off the walls of the grand ballroom. She parked her car a few blocks away, her heart racing with anticipation. This was the life she had always dreamed of, a world where she could belong, a world that felt so tantalizingly close. As she entered the venue, Maria felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The room was filled with people she had only seen in magazines, their laughter ringing through the air like music. She floated through the crowd, her heart swelling with a sense of belonging that had always eluded her. She was no longer a cleaning lady. She was Maria, a woman of mystery and allure. "Maria, there you are!" A woman in a stunning emerald dress approached her, her smile bright and welcoming. "I was wondering when you'd arrive. Come, let me introduce you to some friends." As they moved through the crowd, Maria felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her. She was living a double life, and each smile she shared felt like a betrayal to Tom. Yet in the moment, surrounded by laughter and opulence, she couldn't help but revel in the attention. "Isn't this place amazing?" the woman gushed, gesturing around the room. "You'll love it. The people here have such interesting stories." "Yeah, it's beautiful," Maria replied, her voice slightly distant as she took in the chandeliers and the glimmering champagne flutes. It was everything she had ever wanted, yet it felt hollow. As the evening wore on, Maria mingled with the wealthy elite, her heart racing with exhilaration. She laughed at their jokes, shared in their stories, and for a moment, she felt like she belonged. But deep inside, a nagging thought reminded her of the life she was leaving behind, the life that was slowly unraveling as she spun her web of lies. "Maria," the woman leaned in closer, a conspiratorial gleam in her eye. "You absolutely must come to the next event. It's exclusive, and I can get you an invitation. You'd fit right in." "Oh, I don't know," Maria said, her heart pounding. "I'm still getting used to all this." "Trust me, you're a natural. Just wait until you see the people who attend. It's a world you'll fall in love with," the woman insisted, her enthusiasm infectious. As Maria stood there, surrounded by laughter and glamour, she realized that she was at a crossroads. She could embrace this new life, forget about the guilt that weighed on her, or she could return to her reality with Tom, where love was built on honesty, however difficult that might be. But as she looked around at the shimmering lights and the smiles of those around her, Maria felt the allure of her chosen path pulling her deeper into the shadows of her own making. The thrill of her secret life was intoxicating, and she couldn't help but wonder how far she could go before the truth would come crashing down. In the dimly lit apartment they shared, Maria felt the weight of Tom's gaze boring into her. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. The soft click of the bathroom door echoed through the silence, and before she could turn around, Tom's voice sliced through the air. "Maria, we need to talk," he said, his tone heavy with unspoken frustration. She turned, plastering a smile on her face, hoping to mask the turmoil within. "About what, Tom?" "About you," he replied, crossing his arms over his chest. "You've been acting weird lately. More distant. What's going on?" Maria's heart raced. She had spent months crafting a facade, and now it felt like it was all about to unravel. She took a breath, steeling her resolve. "I've just been working a lot of overtime, that's all. You know how it is. The building needs extra cleaning, and they're paying well for it." Tom raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Overtime? You've been working late almost every night this week. I thought you were supposed to be home to help me figure out our finances." "Look," she said, attempting to sound casual, "I'm doing this for us, to help us get back on our feet." A silence fell between them, thick with tension. Tom stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't like this, Maria. You're keeping things from me. I can feel it." She felt a pang of guilt but pushed it aside. "You're overreacting. I'm just trying to make ends meet. We can't afford to lose any more money right now." "Then why do I see new things around the apartment? Why is there a brand new vacuum cleaner in the closet when our old one was just fine?" he pressed, his frustration boiling over. "What's going on?" "Tom, She hesitated, searching for a believable excuse. "I found a great deal. It was on sale, and it will save us money in the long run. Trust me, it was a good investment." "Investment?" he scoffed, shaking his head. "When did we start making investments with our money? You're not being upfront with me. It feels like you're hiding something." "Maybe I am," Maria snapped, the heat of the moment pushing her to speak before she thought. "But it's not what you think. I'm trying to protect us." Tom looked taken aback, his eyes narrowing. Protect us? By lying to me? That's not protecting anything, Maria. That's just making it worse. Maria's heart raced as she tried to regain control of the conversation. I'm working hard for us. Can't you see that? I'm trying to get us out of this rut. By what? Lying? By hiding money? That's not going to help us in the long run, he argued. I need to know what's really going on, Maria. I can't keep doing this if you're not honest with me. Fine, she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. I'll tell you everything when the time is right. But right now, I need you to trust me. Tom ran a hand through his hair. Exasperation etched across his face. Trust is earned, Maria, and right now, you're not giving me any reason to trust you. With that, he stormed out of the room, leaving her standing alone, heart pounding in her chest. The door slammed behind him, and she leaned against the cold wall, feeling the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Maria knew she had to be careful. The precarious balance she maintained was slipping, and the consequences of her deceit loomed just out of reach. In the days that followed, Maria dove deeper into her secret life, indulging in the fantasies that her newfound wealth allowed. She splurged on extravagant items that brought her fleeting joy. A designer handbag here, a pair of expensive shoes there. A small taste of the life she had always dreamed of. She justified each purchase as a necessity, a way to reward herself for the hard work she put in at the cleaning job. Look, Tom, she said one evening, pulling out a shimmering silver dress from a shopping bag. I got this for that party next week. It was on sale. Tom glanced at the dress, his expression a mix of confusion and frustration. A sale? Maria, we can't afford this right now. We need to be saving money, not spending it. It's just one dress, she replied, her voice a little too high-pitched. And it's for a special occasion. Don't you want me to look nice? Of course I want you to look nice, he said, his voice softening, but the tension was still palpable. But I also want us to be secure. Every little bit counts. Right, she said, forcing a smile. And this dress will be worth it. I'll wear it for years to come. Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I just don't understand why you're being so reckless. Because I deserve this, she retorted, the anger bubbling to the surface. I've worked my fingers to the bone for years. I want to enjoy something for once. Enjoying something doesn't mean putting us deeper in debt, he replied, his voice steady but firm. Maybe you should get a job, she shot back, the words escaping before she could rein them in. Then you wouldn't have to worry about what I'm doing with my money. Fine, he said, his tone icy. Maybe I will. As the days turned into weeks, the chasm between them widened. Tom continued to search for work, but each rejection felt like a nail in his already fragile self-esteem. He spent long hours scouring job boards, often coming home defeated, only to find Maria in a new outfit, swirling around the living room, reveling in her own reflection. One evening, while nursing a beer on the couch, Tom watched Maria apply makeup, transforming herself into someone he barely recognized. The woman in the mirror was radiant, but the glow of her beauty felt overshadowed by the dark cloud of deceit that hung over them. Are you even going to be home tonight? He asked, trying to keep his tone light, although the hurt seeped through. I'll be back late, Maria said, dabbing her lips with gloss. There's a party I can't miss. It's important for networking. Networking? Tom echoed, incredulous. You've been going to a lot of parties lately. Isn't that getting a bit extravagant? It's not just for fun, it's business, she insisted, though she sensed her own words were increasingly hollow. He studied her, the betrayal looming in his heart. I just wish you'd include me in your plans. I feel like an outsider in my own home. Tom, please, she said, the familiar guilt creeping in. I'm doing all of this for us. For us, he repeated bitterly. Or for you. With a wave of frustration, she stormed out of the room, leaving Tom more isolated than ever. He picked up the remote and turned on the television, but the flickering images barely held his attention. Instead, he found himself lost in thoughts of what had gone wrong, replaying the moments that had led them here. Meanwhile, at the party, Maria felt alive. The music pulsed through her veins as she mingled with the elite, the champagne flowing freely. She laughed and chatted, the worries of her life slipping away with every sip. It was intoxicating, the feeling of being desired, of being part of something grand. As she navigated through the crowd, a man with striking features approached her. He wore an expensive suit that hugged his frame perfectly, exuding an air of confidence that instantly drew her in. "Maria, right," he said with a charming smile. "I've seen you around. You have quite the presence." "Thank you," she replied, her heart racing at the attention. "And you are?" "Jacob," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "I couldn't help but notice how you light up the room. You must be enjoying the perks of your newfound success." "Success?" she echoed, her pulse quickening. "I'm just working hard." He chuckled softly, leaning in closer. "Let me give you a piece of advice, Maria. With money comes opportunity, but it also comes with strings attached. You have to be careful who you trust." "What do you mean?" she asked, intrigued yet wary. "Let's just say not everyone in this world has your best interests at heart." "Wealth can be a double-edged sword," Jacob warned, his gaze piercing through her facade. "Invest wisely and surround yourself with people who elevate you, not drain you." Maria felt a shiver run down her spine. She had thought she was in control, but now doubt began to seep into her mind. She smiled, trying to appear unfazed, but Jacob's words echoed ominously. There was a darker side to this world she had entered, and she had to tread carefully or risk losing everything. As the night wore on, Maria danced and laughed, but the thrill of the party began to feel like a mask, hiding the reality she was desperately trying to escape. Little did she know, the very secrets she thought she could control were beginning to unravel in ways she could never have imagined. Maria stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair for what felt like the 100th time. The reflection staring back at her was a stranger, someone who no longer resembled the cleaning lady who scrubbed floors at the high-rise. This woman wore a sleek designer dress, the kind that whispered of wealth and exclusivity. The thrill of her new life buzzed through her, yet there was a knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. "Are you ready yet?" Tom's voice brought her back to the moment. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his expression a mixture of confusion and hurt. Maria forced a smile, but it felt brittle and unconvincing. "Just a minute, I'm almost done," she called back, hastily applying a touch of lipstick. She didn't want to face him right now, not when the rift between them had grown wider than the gap of their financial status. Ever since the lottery win, Maria had transformed into a person who felt she needed to hide, and Tom's growing suspicion only added to her unease. "Are you sure you want to go to this party tonight? I mean, it's not really our crowd," he said, his tone laced with concern. He looked down at his worn-out jeans, the hem frayed from too many washes, and the faded t-shirt that had seen better days. "Maybe we could just order a pizza and watch a movie instead?" The suggestion stung. Maria could feel the weight of her secret pressing down on her, the guilt clawing at her conscience. "No, Tom, this is important for me," she replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. "It's a networking opportunity. You know how hard it is to get ahead in this city." "Yeah, but it just feels like you're distancing yourself from me," Tom said, a hint of desperation in his voice. "I'm here, trying to figure things out, and you're off with these people, pretending like you're someone you're not." Maria took a deep breath, her heart racing. "I'm not pretending. I'm just trying to make something of myself. I want us to have a better life," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "Please, try to understand." Tom's expression softened momentarily, but the hurt lingered. "I just miss you, Maria, the way things used to be." She turned back to the mirror, avoiding his gaze. The truth was that she missed the simplicity of their lives too, but the allure of wealth had a powerful grip on her. She couldn't simply let it go. "I'll be back late," she muttered, trying to brush off the conversation. "Just wait for me." With that, she slipped out of the apartment, leaving Tom standing in the doorway, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The elevator ride down felt interminably long. As the doors opened, Maria stepped out into the bright lights of the city, the pulse of New York invigorating her. She was eager to dive into this new world, a world where she could finally breathe, unshackled from the weight of her old life. At the party, laughter and clinking glasses enveloped her like a warm embrace. Maria navigated through the crowd, her heart racing with excitement and a tinge of guilt. She spotted the mysterious man from the last gathering, a charming figure named Alexander, whose piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through her. "Maria, so glad to see you again," he said, his voice smooth like silk. How have you been finding the high life? Busy, she replied, forcing a smile. But it's exhilarating. Exhilarating indeed, he replied, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But remember, with great wealth comes great scrutiny. You must be careful. His words sent a shiver down her spine, and she quickly looked around, half expecting Tom to appear, but he was far from this world. I'm just trying to enjoy it, she said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. Enjoy it, yes, but don't lose yourself in it, he warned, his gaze intense. You have to be strategic. Wealth can be a double-edged sword. Maria nodded, feeling a mix of intrigue and unease. She was aware that the deeper she sank into this lifestyle, the more complicated her life became. But the thrill was intoxicating. She felt invincible, yet the shadows of her deception loomed larger. As the night wore on, Maria mingled, laughed, and danced, all while Tom's face flickered in her mind like a distant memory. She tried to silence the voice of guilt nagging at her, reminding her of the life they shared before this whirlwind began. Later, in the quiet of her lavish apartment, Maria tossed and turned in bed, unable to shake the feeling of unease. The money had changed her, altered her relationships, and she was losing sight of who she once was. The next day, the tension between her and Tom had reached a boiling point. He confronted her as soon as she walked through the door, his eyes dark with frustration. Where have you been? You said you'd be back late, but it's past midnight. I was worried sick. I told you I was networking, she snapped, trying to maintain her composure. I have to make connections if we want to improve our lives. Connections? Or are you just running around with these people? Tom's voice trembled with hurt. You're changing, Maria. I don't recognize you anymore. Maria felt her heart race. You don't understand. This is my chance to be someone, to have a life beyond this. The words spilled out, raw and desperate. And what about us? Tom shot back, his voice rising. What about our life? You're hiding things from me, and I can't stand it. In a moment of frustration, Maria let slip the truth. I won the lottery, Tom. I didn't want to tell you because The air grew thick with silence, and she knew immediately it was a mistake. Tom's face went pale, his expression morphing from anger to shock. You what? I won $10 million, she stammered, the weight of her confession crashing down around her. I didn't want to share it with you because I thought you'd just waste it. I wanted to keep it safe, for us. Safe? You mean for you? Tom's voice cracked, and she could see the devastation in his eyes. You've been lying to me this whole time? All those nights out? All those secrets? Tom, please, let me explain, she pleaded, her heart racing. I was trying to protect us. Protect us? He echoed incredulously. You've destroyed everything. How can I trust you now? In a moment of desperation, Tom stepped back, his posture shifting as if a weight had been lifted. I should expose you. Make everyone aware of your lies. Maria's heart thudded painfully in her chest. No, please don't do that. I can change. I promise I'll share it with you. We can figure this out together. Figure what out? He spat, anger bubbling beneath the surface. You've already made your choice. You chose the money over me. Her mind raced, and she grasped for a lifeline. What if I promise to change? To include you in my plans? I'll make it right, Tom. Just give me a chance. The room was heavy with tension, each heartbeat echoing in the silence. Tom's expression softened slightly, though the hurt still lingered in his eyes. You can't just erase what you've done, Maria. But if you're serious, maybe we can work through this. But you have to be honest with me from now on. I will, I promise, she exclaimed, relief flooding through her. Just don't expose me. I can't bear to lose you. He regarded her for a long moment, the turmoil in his expression battling with the flicker of hope. You better mean it, Maria, because I'm not sure I can forgive you so easily. As they stood there, the air thick with unspoken words, Maria realized the precarious balance she had created. She had successfully kept Tom in the dark, but now the threads of her deception were fraying. The stakes were higher than ever, and as her world spun out of control, She had to navigate the delicate web of lies she'd woven, unsure of where it would lead them both. Maria sat on the edge of her bed, her heart racing, as the voice on the other end of the line echoed ominously in her mind. "Ms. Rivera, we need to discuss your winning ticket. There's been a discrepancy flagged in our system that requires your immediate attention." The calm yet unnerving tone of the lottery official cut through her blissful illusion like a knife. Maria could scarcely believe what she was hearing. Panic gripped her chest, and her mind raced with thoughts of what could go wrong. She had carefully constructed a facade around her newfound wealth, and now it felt as if everything was about to come crashing down. "Are you there, Ms. Rivera?" the official prompted, breaking her momentary stupor. "Yes, I'm here," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you mean by a discrepancy?" "We have reason to believe that the ticket may not have been purchased in accordance with lottery regulations. We need to investigate further," the official explained, his voice steady yet uncompromising. Maria's thoughts spun wildly. She had bought that ticket on a whim, using her last few dollars, and now it felt like the universe was conspiring against her. "How long will this take?" she managed to ask, her mind racing with the implications of losing everything. "We'll need some time to verify the details. I advise you not to make any significant financial decisions until we complete our investigation," the official said before hanging up. The phone slipped from her grasp and fell onto the bed as dread washed over her. She felt the walls of her carefully crafted life closing in around her. The thrilling rush of her secret had morphed into a suffocating weight, and she knew she had to confront Tom. She quickly collected her thoughts, her heart pounding with anxiety, and rushed out of the apartment. As she hurried down the bustling streets of New York City, her mind replayed the conversation repeatedly. What if they found out she hadn't told Tom? What if he connected the dots and realized the extent of her deceit? He could easily ruin her plans, and the thought made her stomach churn. When she finally reached home, the sight that greeted her sent a jolt of confusion and fear through her. Tom was in the living room, shoving clothes into a worn-out duffel bag. His back was to her, but the way he was moving, pulling things out of the closet, stuffing them carelessly, was unlike him. "Tom, what are you doing?" Maria asked, her voice catching in her throat. He turned slowly to face her, his expression hardened. "I'm packing. I can't stay here, Maria. This isn't working. You've been acting different, and I can't ignore it anymore." "What do you mean?" she stammered, her heart sinking. "What's going on?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You've been distant. You think I don't notice? I've seen you come home late, looking like you've been living some kind of double life. And now this?" He gestured toward the bag, his voice rising. "I can't do this. I need to look out for myself." Her mind raced. "Tom, please. Just talk to me. I can explain everything. You don't need to go anywhere." He took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping slightly, but the anger in his eyes remained. "I can't trust you anymore. I've had enough of the lies." "Lies? What lies?" she asked, panic seeping into her voice. "What are you talking about?" Tom took a step closer, his voice low and deliberate. "I know about the money, Maria. I found your stash." Her heart dropped. "What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me. You think I didn't notice when you started withdrawing large sums of cash? I thought you were saving up for something special. But now I see the truth. You won the lottery, didn't you?" Maria felt a cold sweat break out across her forehead. "How did you?" "I overheard you on the phone with someone," he interrupted, his eyes narrowing. "You thought you could keep it all to yourself, didn't you? You thought I wouldn't find out?" She opened her mouth to deny it, to try to smooth things over, but the weight of her guilt felt suffocating. "Tom, You didn't even think to share it with me," he shouted, his voice echoing through their small apartment. "I've been struggling, fighting to find work, and you're off living some fantasy life without me?" "Stop!" she cried, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "You don't understand. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how." "Oh, really?" he scoffed, crossing his arms. "And what's your plan now? You think you can just throw money at your problems and everything will be fine?" "Tom, please listen to me," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I didn't want this to come between us. I thought I thought if I could just make a little more money first, I could provide for both of us. I wanted us to have a better life." He shook his head, a bitter smile playing on his lips. "A better life? By lying and sneaking around? You've made a mess of everything, Maria. And now you're going to lose it all." "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom stepped back, his expression unreadable. "I have my own winnings. From a side job I kept secret. I was going to surprise you, but now I think it's best if we split everything. I have evidence of your lies, and I'm not going to let you take it all." "Tom, you can't do this!" Maria's voice broke, the reality of his words crashing down around her. "You wouldn't really... "I will do whatever it takes to get what I deserve," he said coldly. "You've made your choices, Maria. Now I'm making mine." As the weight of his threat settled in, Maria felt as if the ground beneath her was crumbling. She had fought so hard to escape her mundane life, and now it felt like she was losing everything she had worked for. "Please don't," she whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'll fix this. I swear I'll fix it." Tom looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening slightly, but he quickly hardened again. "You had your chance, Maria. Now you'll face the consequences." With that, he turned back to his bag, zipping it shut with a finality that echoed in the small space between them. Maria felt a mix of anger and despair boiling within her. She had gambled everything on her secret, and now Tom was pulling the rug out from under her. In an instant, the thrill of her hidden wealth transformed into a nightmare of potential loss, her dreams of a better life slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. As Tom picked up the bag and headed toward the door, Maria realized that she had a choice to make. She could fight for her fortune, but at what cost? Or she could confront the consequences of her betrayal, risking everything she had built. "Tom!" she called out, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her. "Wait!" He paused, glancing back at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "I'm not letting you go like this," she declared, her resolve hardening. "If you want half, you'll have to fight for it. But I'm not giving up without a battle." "Fine," he replied, a challenging glint in his eyes. "Let's see what you're really made of, Maria." And just like that, the stage was set for a confrontation neither of them could have anticipated, each ready to lay their cards on the table. The secrets, the lies, and the money hung precariously in the balance, and Maria knew that whatever came next would change their lives forever.